Imagine the Western Front in 1918. Mud trenches, barbed wire, artillery smoke. And through the fog, tanks begin to appear. First one, then 10, then dozens. British Mark IVs and Mark Vs crawl across the battlefield. Small French Renault FTs move between them. Heavy Saint-Chamons follow behind. And somewhere in the formation is one of Germany's rare A7V tanks. For soldiers in 1918, these machines represent some of the most advanced weapons on Earth. But then something appears that should not exist here. A tank from more than a century in the future. An M1 Abrams. One modern tank. Against an entire generation of World War I armor. So who wins? Could the Abrams destroy everything sent against it? Or would sheer numbers eventually bring it down? Because this battle has a twist. The greatest enemy of the Abrams may not be a World War I cannon. It may simply be math. But first, let's see what these early tanks can actually do. Tanks first entered combat in 1916. They were designed to cross trenches, crush barbed wire, survive machine gun fire, and help infantry move through defensive positions. They were not designed for fast tank battles. And compared with a modern tank, they were incredibly slow. Take the British Mark IV. It weighed roughly 28 tons and moved at only around 6 kilometers per hour. That's barely faster than walking. Its armor was only about 12 millimeters thick. Some versions carried two 57-millimeter guns along with several machine guns. And it needed a crew of 8. Inside, conditions were horrible. Heat, noise, engine fumes, almost no visibility. No modern optics, no computers, no stabilization. The crew had to look through narrow vision slits and somehow understand what was happening outside. By 1918, Britain had the improved Mark V. It was easier to control and slightly better protected, but it was still slow and primitive by modern standards. Then there was the French Renault FT. This little tank was much smaller, but its design was revolutionary. Driver in the front, engine in the rear, a rotating turret on top. That basic layout would influence tanks for generations. The Renault FT weighed only about 7 tons and had a crew of 2. Some carried machine guns. Others had a small 37mm cannon. And then we have the German A7V, a huge armored box on tracks. More than 30 tons. A crew that could reach 18 men. A 57mm main gun. And heavier armor than many Allied tanks. But Germany built only a tiny number of them. Now put an Abrams next to these machines, and the technological gap becomes ridiculous. The Abrams weighs more than 70 tons. It has a 1500 horsepower turbine engine. It can move many times faster than the heavy tanks of 1918. Its main weapon is a 120mm smoothbore cannon. But the biggest advantage isn't even the gun. It's information. An Abrams crew has modern optics, thermal imaging, laser range finding, and computerized fire control. A World War I tank crew has tiny viewing ports. So in many situations, the Abrams would see them long before they clearly understood where the Abrams even was. Now let's begin. 30 World War I tanks move toward the Abrams. Mark V's in the center. Renault FTs spreading out along the sides. Heavier vehicles behind them. The Abrams gunner selects the first target. The range is measured. The gun fires. One Mark V is hit. Then another. Then a Renault. For early tank armor, a modern 120mm hit would be devastating. These old vehicles were protected by armor measured in millimeters. The Abrams was built to fight armored vehicles from an entirely different technological world. The old formation keeps advancing. The Abrams fires again. And again. Suddenly, tanks are being destroyed before many crews can even identify what is attacking them. Then the World War I tanks begin firing back. Shells land around the Abrams. Some miss. Some explode nearby. Eventually a round hits. Does it destroy the Abrams? Probably not. At least not with a normal hit against its most heavily protected areas. World War I tank guns were never designed to defeat modern composite armor. But that doesn't make the Abrams invincible. This is important. A tank is more than just its armor. It has tracks, optics, sensors, external equipment. A lucky hit might damage something important even without penetrating the crew compartment. A damaged track could stop the tank. A damaged optic could reduce its ability to fight. And if enough weapons are firing at one target, strange things can happen. But in a straightforward fight, the Abrams still has an enormous advantage. So the first group is destroyed. The Abrams moves. Then another group appears. And another. And another. Now the battle gets interesting. Because we're not talking about 10 World War I tanks. Thousands of tanks were built during the war. The Renault FT alone was produced in huge numbers. More than 1,000 Mark IVs were built. There were Mark Vs, Schneider tanks, St. Chamans, Whippets, A7Vs, and other armored vehicles. Of course, they could never all appear in one field at the same time. So let's imagine they arrive in waves. The Abrams uses its mobility. It fires from long range, then moves, then fires again. The old tanks try to close the distance, but some of them are moving at little more than walking speed. The Abrams can simply leave, change position, and attack from somewhere else. The Renault FTs try to spread out. Mark Vs come from the front. Perhaps an A7V leads another group. But their armor difference barely matters to the Abrams' main gun. 12 millimeters, 16, 30. Against modern tank ammunition, all of it is extremely thin. At this point, it looks like the Abrams could continue forever. But it can't. Because now we open the ammunition compartment. The Abrams carries roughly 42 rounds for its main gun. 42. That number changes everything. Imagine absolutely perfect shooting. One shot. One destroyed tank. No misses. No damage but still moving targets. No need to fire twice. Even under those unrealistic conditions, 42 rounds can only destroy 42 tanks with the main gun. And after that, there may still be hundreds or even thousands of vehicles left. Yes, the Abrams has machine guns. Those would be devastating against exposed crews and infantry. But machine guns are not a replacement for the 120mm cannon when dealing with armored vehicles. So now the most dangerous enemy appears. Not the Mark V, not the Renault, not the A7V. Numbers. And World War I commanders don't even need to destroy the Abrams immediately. They just need to make it spend resources. Imagine they stop attacking in one giant formation. Instead, they divide. 20 tanks here. Another group several kilometers away. More tanks moving in from another direction. The Abrams has to choose. Which group should it attack? Which one should it ignore? Every shot uses ammunition. Every movement uses fuel. Every hour increases fatigue. And now we reach the next problem. Fuel. The Abrams has a powerful gas turbine engine. That gives it impressive mobility. But it also needs fuel. A lot of it. And this is 1918. There is no modern support unit waiting behind the front. No truck carrying fresh 120mm ammunition. No trained Abrams maintenance team. No modern spare parts. No diagnostic equipment. So even if no World War I tank manages to penetrate its armor, the Abrams has a countdown running from the moment the battle begins. Ammunition decreases. Fuel decreases. The crew becomes tired. Equipment may eventually fail. So imagine the Abrams has destroyed several dozen tanks. Its main gun ammunition is almost gone. Its fuel is running low. And more old tanks are still appearing. What does the commander do? Probably the smart thing. Leave. Not because the Abrams lost a tank duel, but because staying would eventually turn a nearly unstoppable machine into a 70-ton object with no fuel and no useful main gun ammunition. And that gives us our first answer. In one battle, the Abrams dominates. But one Abrams with no resupply cannot destroy every World War I tank. Now let's make the scenario more unfair. Give the Abrams one modern base. Fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and technicians. Now things become terrifying for the armies of 1918. The Abrams enters battle, destroys dozens of vehicles, returns to base, refuels, reloads, receives maintenance, then comes back. Again and again. Imagine being a World War I tank crew. Yesterday, this unknown machine destroyed 20 tanks. Today, it appears somewhere else. Tomorrow, another formation disappears. The soldiers might start thinking they're fighting something impossible. But even now, the Abrams has one final limitation. There is still only one of it. It can only fight in one place at one time. While the Abrams destroys tanks in one sector, enemy units can move somewhere else. While it returns to base, the battlefield continues to change. One tank can dominate a local battle, but it cannot cover an entire front. And that's the real answer. Technologically, World War I tanks are completely outclassed. The Abrams is faster, far better protected, far more accurate. It can see farther. It can fight effectively at distances early tank crews could barely imagine. In a direct confrontation, the old tanks have very little chance. But wars are not decided by armor thickness alone. They are also decided by ammunition, fuel, maintenance, time, distance, and numbers. So could one Abrams defeat a group of World War I tanks? Absolutely. Could it destroy dozens of them? Very likely. Could old tank crews eventually damage a track, optic, or another vulnerable component? It's possible. But could one fully loaded Abrams with no resupply destroy every tank built during the First World War? No. Not because a Mark V is stronger. Not because an A7V has better armor. But because 42 main gun rounds cannot become thousands. And that's what makes this comparison interesting. More than a century of technology turned the tank from a slow, unreliable metal box into one of the most sophisticated fighting vehicles on Earth. But one rule never changed. Every weapon runs out of ammunition. Every vehicle needs fuel. Every machine needs maintenance. And one tank is still only one tank. So what do you think? How many World War I tanks could a single Abrams realistically destroy before it had to withdraw? 20, 40, 50, maybe more. Tell me your answer in the comments. And what should KAIRO test next? One modern warship against a World War I fleet. An Apache helicopter against a World War II army. Or maybe one modern submarine against an entire fleet from the 1940s. You decide. And we'll see what happens.